spoke about our unanimous appreciation of Mr. President and especially the confidence he has in the forum. And we also passed a vote of confidence on the National Caretaker and Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee of the party, chaired by Governor Mai Malabuni and including two other governors, among others, Governor Abu Bello of Nasarawa State and Governor Boyega, South Niger, Governor Boyega Oyetola of Osun State, who have done an incredible job of running our party successfully, mobilizing people into the party. And we are very, very happy with their conduct. We discussed our oncoming convention, which you may recall, I had cause to address the press after we visited with Mr. President in November, where we expressed that both Mr. President and the party have agreed that the convention will take place in February.
February is still realistic?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. When in February, sir?
Under our, we are one group of stakeholders in the party, and our party respects institutions. The appropriate organ of the party is the National Caretaker Committee that will announce a date.
Welcome back. Well, yes, as you've seen there, we've got His Excellency Professor Ben Ayade, Governor of Cross River State, joining us this morning on Sunrise. Good morning, Your Excellency. Thank you for joining us today on the program.
Good morning. Thank you.
Well, just we'll start off with where you were yesterday at that launch, because going through some of the dailies today, some of the concerns were, as much as they were glad to see all of that produce in the sector at that time, but questions concerning sustainability, how is that going to affect is it, or should we expect, and how soon, that it impacts positively on the price of a bag of rice out there in the market? So what's the thinking concerning all of that?
Sustainability is critical. Indeed, the quantum of rice, over 1 million bags of rice in one location, is actually very commendable. And I'd like to commend Mr. President on this. In terms of sustainability, what is required is to support agriculture through a semi-industrial process towards achieving agro-industrialization. Smallholder farmers will only get sustained if this Anchor Borers program is sustained. But where there is a change of government in the course of time after 2023 elections, and these people have not reached a stable production limit, this may not be sustainable. And that's why my strong recommendation is that we should institutionalize the principles of agro-industrialization, which means, take a typical case of Thailand, the infrastructural responsibility towards agricultural farmlands is the responsibility of government. Government provides irrigation services, it provides all forms of training to farmers, provides fertilizer support and uptake. The farmer has a responsibility of nurturing his farm only. But in Nigeria, he gets money from just small money he gets, or that money from central bank. That's the same money he does the tilling, the land clearing, the plowing, the planting, the harvesting, the milling, and then the selling. That is too much for a small farmer. So to make it sustainable, government will have a robust program to uptake some of the responsibilities that otherwise are being held by these rice farmers. These big pyramids come from an organized effort. By example, the Kebbi State Governor, Jigawa State Governor, and all the deliberate efforts of the food security program of the Mr. President. How sustainable this is, unless we institutionalize it, it can be successful in this regime and start failing if we don't have a proper government that is coming in 2023. But the price of rice in the market is a reflection of how we sustain this program. Today, the price dangles between 22 to 35,000 naira, depending on the variety, quality, whether it's short grain or long grains. That's where it is. But I think that for us to sustain this production, in spite of the fact that there's a speculated report that about 2 million metric tons of rice is still illegally imported into this country. If those borders are closed, and we make a law that no foreign rice in the Nigerian market, but I think definitely becomes sustainable when everybody becomes dependent on local rice.
You know, yes, you were given that presidential honor for what you've done as well in that rice value chain. And then we've seen you just now mention some states, and we've also seen state-to-state dealings at the government level with this product. So the question then is, where is the private sector? Because shouldn't they be the ones also driving some of these things, which will perhaps to a large extent, if you agree, address that sustainability question?
Oh, you're definitely right. And that's why I have advocated that instead of having an anchor borers program, perhaps we should now advance to an anchor farmers program, where there's a major private sector farmer, perhaps 2 or 3 per state, where we have predominance of rice cultivation. Now, when you have an anchor farmers program, we know that there's a major farmer, for example, in Ogoja Cross River State, and he gets all the massive inputs, long-term loans, and supporting with all the irrigation and agro-industrial infrastructure. Then it becomes sustainable. It becomes a private sector who will now do a smallholder scheme that are all aggregating to him at the aggregation center and as a matter of fact, the processing center. I agree that government cannot continue to drive and lead the rice revolution. It gets to a point where the private sector should take over, and it's gradually happening. Dangote, for example, is coming into the rice game. Most of the rice mills are privately owned. Most of these farms are privately owned. We at governors level will only come in to be able to create a direction, a focus. And I had mentioned those 2 states because the 2 states have the official position of the government under the Presidential Task Force on Rice to be able to drive the rice production process. Not necessarily because they are governors of those states, but because they chair and head and drive this rice revolution program. On my award is the application of technology to bring value. The footfall of rice production cannot increase when we continue in the atavistic way we do. For example, somebody is still growing rice with seeds. The factors that govern the growth, harvest, and yield per hectare dependent on so many variables. Example, if the seed itself is dormant by nature, if the seeds fall on a barren soil, if the seed has such a thick shell, if the nutrients in the monocotyledon or in the cotyledon of the seed is worn out, if the seed is poorly stored. And so Nigeria's yield is about 1.5 to 2 tons per hectare because the primordial approach is so rudimentary. It's as old as history. But technology has come in to make provision for all of that. In the process you find in Cross River State, we have a structure and system where our seeds are produced by ourselves. And seed means that you'll be able to reduce the water content to as low as 12% and store below 8 degrees centigrade so that the metabolic activities of the seed is arrested until such a time that you do the planting. It is when you plant that there is merismasis occasioned by the seed trying to germinate. So the stem comes out. When it comes out, as soon as it starts to grow leaves, the xanthophyls that the yellow carotenoid will help in photosynthesis. The plant can become self-dependent. But where the seeds already depleted in nutrients because of long storage, the stem would not be able to germinate. So the factors that govern the yield of a land, a hectare of land, are controlled by seedling method. And that's why the seedling technology, which means don't grow rice with seeds, grow with seedlings. That's the technology all over the world. It's still in Nigeria that we're still cultivating with seed by broadcasting. That is actually very, very unproductive. That is what gave me my award for bringing innovation and technology and digitalizing agriculture. And that's the way to go. Indeed, the farmers in Cross River, and just wait a while and you see what will happen. We also are going to make sure that no paddy leaves Cross River State so that the Ogoja rice mill would have enough rice to mill. And once we do that, you see the sequestration of paddy availability in the marketplace because thousands of trucks comes into Ogoja, which stretches all the way from Obubra Abbey down to Obaliko and Obudu. And take our paddy because before now, when I was a senator, I went into Dueka and I saw rice being spread all over the tar roads because there's no mill. So people from other states come buy off our rice. With what we have done now in Ogoja, with the technology we're using, getting about 8 to 10 tons per hectare, the farmers are happy. And I think this is the way to go for Nigeria. We must make sure that planting is not done by man. There are transplanters. You just sit on in and drive like a car, and it's doing the planting. Why would you put people through such slavish, atavistic, old-fashioned methods of business and think that they should go ahead and do what their parents did and did until got to old age and died with nothing to show for it? So agriculture is very unattractive to young people. And that's why we have a Green Millennial Program across the state to ensure that we bring in the densification of young people to see the value and beauty, the wealth that comes with agriculture when it's supported with technology. So technological revolution in agriculture is what Crossriver is bringing to the table. And basically that's the philosophy to drive a sustainable agricultural program, because nobody will continue to go the way we are going, including the new technology, which is fertigation, drip irrigation, pilot system where you do broadcasting using modern irrigation technology. We can't continue to wait on rain-fed irrigation as a means of growing rice.
Well, Your Excellency, rice is just one of those things that that forms issues around the economy. It's just one of many elements in agriculture, which is just one of many elements in the economy. And you would, of course, be aware that the opposition party, the leading opposition party, the PDP, as far as they are concerned, have scored the federal government very, very low in terms of the economy. I'm sure you have seen or heard about that communique. What's your take on that? You were in the PDP before, and now, you know, with the scheme of things and all of the information available to you, what's your take on their reaction so far?
Well, I think the problem with our country is that they carry politics beyond the boundaries of reason and logic. Party politics and elections, I imagine, should start ending as soon as elections are over, and come together as a country to drive prosperity and set up a prosperity corridor for our younger generation. Now, the 21st century illiterate is not somebody who cannot read or write. A 21st century illiterate is a critic, because in the 21st century, critics have moved to value addition, add your value. So basically, PDP's comment comes from the point of an illiterate 21st century person. Otherwise, you should rather be articulating what you can do in a public domain to add value. As to say you stop the government very poorly, whether in terms of post-sufficiency or general economy, and then rice is just one simple example. Government is having an expansive program, 21 different crops and the associated value chains. I take poultry, for example. Cross River State has a big factory, Kalachicha, produces 24,000 birds a day. We are filled to the top with orders that we can't even meet. We need at least 40,000 farmers across the board to be able to grow maize and soybeans for uptake to our pig mill, to be able to process the pigs, to pick the chicken in the poultry farm, for them to be transported to the poultry slaughterhouse for processing and onward export, particularly with this African continental free trade agreement was reached. The Gulf of Guinea is prostate and dependent on foreign inputs, particularly protein intake, even from France. So this government, President Muhammadu Buhari's government, has created a massive superhighway of opportunity in the agricultural value chain. That is enough to catalyze the economy. But where people look at this Christmas, a lot of hampers these days, people are moving away from teas and cans and imported food and the rest and replacing it with local rice. Cross River State was delivering only local rice as our hamper. We never bought any canned food or anything that is sophisticated. We stayed with the rice. So if you stay back and just be a critic instead of somebody who is adding value, you continue to see it from the negativistic prism, because that's how you think, because the failure of the existing government gives you a chance to succeed. And that is what has kept Nigeria and Africa where we are. Elections in every 4 years. Where can you plan for a nation of our size and magnitude in 4 years? And within that 4 years, 2 years is spent on election, 1 year before and 1 year after. First one to get the election, one after it to be in court. So you basically have only 2 years to run a government. So if you look at President Muhammadu Buhari and the associated pressure that has come, which he inherited from the insecurity that he inherited, he has done magic to stabilize the nation as it is, reduce the banditry. You know, the investment in technology to be able to sustain, control, and deal with ISWAP, Boko Haram, and all the international conspiracy.
Well, Your Excellency, there are some figures to some of the claims that the opposition party is making concerning the economy and all of that. We'll get into that when we return from this break, Your Excellency. So please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Your Excellency, your former party, the PDP, said they handed over a $550 billion economy, the biggest, the largest in Africa, but under APC, Nigeria is the poverty capital of the world. In 2015, under the PDP, the exchange rate, official exchange rate was 198 naira to the dollar. Now, under the PDP, it's almost 500 naira to a dollar. In 2015, unemployment rate was 7.3% under PDP. It is now 33%, one of the highest in the world under APC. In 2015, the pump price of petrol was 87 naira per litre. Now it's 165 naira with potential to rise in the year and climbing under APC. Debt servicing now under APC takes over 98% of the federal budget. And as far as they're concerned, the tales of woe is endless. How do you respond?
First, my response is, so what have they done? If this statistics is right in their own minds, what have they done? How have they compared it with circumstances that have changed? How have they compared it with the associated indices that has its clear indication that the whole world itself had gone through a huge global recession? If I hold this data correct, the first question I will ask is, for them who are in the PDP and looking at it from the PDP point of view, what have they done in their states that have made a difference compared to most of the states in APC that have structured programs in a place that's lifting their people out of poverty? The data may be what you have said, but the reality is that under the circumstances we find ourselves, massive COVID influence leading to a shutdown, global shutdown of the world, associated with the ISWAP and indeed the Boko Haram crisis coming in from Afghanistan, leading to the fact that the occupation of the northern part of Nigeria and the deliberate discovery of certain essential elements that of great industrial significance, industrial minerals, leading to a deliberate international conspiracy for the occupation of northern part of Nigeria for the extraction of essential minerals, brought severe pressure. Perhaps if it was not Buhari's administration with his military background, this country would have collapsed completely at this stage. People don't know that because if you have been able to avoid a risk, nobody can see it because it was avoided. I think that situation could have been worse. Today, the APC government is coming up with a robust program. We have 42 billion tons of bitumen deposit in Nigeria, making us the third after Canada and Venezuela. This government has a robust plan to put in place a proper bitumen processing plant, which has never existed. I don't like comparing with PDP because PDP gave me the background and opportunity to be a senator and governor, and I will never denigrate PDP. I would prefer to speak as a nationalist. I would prefer to speak as a Nigerian. I would not want to speak on party lines because party lines is what has kept this country backward. We should think like a country. We should think like a nation. There's nothing wrong with a PDP government, the PDP people making inputs to bring value. The drop in petrol price is deliberate. I mean, the increase in pump price is necessary at this point if the Nigerian citizens are properly informed on the cumulative impact, and if there's a cushioning effect, discussing with labor and reaching an agreement on how to progress. I also know that I stand with the masses at all times. So I will respond in the way and manner that the masses would also know that we stand with them at this point. But if we don't, all the neighboring countries are having very very high fuel pump prices. And we keep ours as low as 87 as it then was. If we do that, smuggling will continue to be the order of the day. So you are actually subsidizing other countries, not subsidizing for your people. So President Muhammadu Buhari is recalibrating that to find a way how the excess monies from the subsidy removal will bring fat eventual value to the citizens. And that's why we have all these robust programs that are coming up aggressively. You know, time heals, and these changes are occasioned by the experiential development of the country. It takes even the UK almost 200 years to have a robust private sector and a good economy. So we're just 61 years old. This is all part of the growth process. So I think hasty generalization and excessive criticism based on data without actually sitting back to actually see how you can add value, you'll be failing. We have 3,000 tons of iron ore deposit in Nigeria. If we start harvesting and bringing value to those tons, it will replace this unnecessary subsidy we are putting into the oil sector, into the petroleum sector. If we ask that every oil company that is producing up to 100,000 barrels per day must have a modular refinery within 6 to 8 months, which is doable, there's just 95 million naira to put a modular refinery, and stop the export of crude oil, and stop the import of refined petroleum products, the dollar will start having strength. These are all the programs of the APC. This is why I came into APC to add value. This is why I think that they will realize that as a nation, we should rather come together and drive the process.
A couple of issues, Your Excellency.
Yeah?
If I can just come in, pardon me. So if you're saying that you joined the APC to add value, are you essentially preferring a one-party state for Nigeria such that all opposition governors, if they want to add value, should come into the APC so that they can add that value? Are you proposing a one-party state?
No, not at all. Not at all. But I also think that I need a fertile environment where my intellect can bring value. At the PDP, I saw intellectual sterility, because we didn't have the platform where I can actually add value. And I think APC provides the ground, easy access to the president, values and additions and subtractions you do healthily, and nobody is suspicious. There's no overlord who thinks that he owns the party. There's a general feeling of oneness. Even though there's internal disagreement, they're always resolved at the last minute, as it was its own resolve. So I think that it gives me a fertile ground to actually develop Proginet.
So back to that data. I mean, the data is clear. As an academic, I'm sure you know the value of having those figures out there, what we had before now and what it is now. I mean, that's essentially reality. Figures don't lie. In fact, some would tell you that it might even be worse than what the figure is telling us. So when you say that things could actually be worse, so Nigerians can perhaps appreciate your position, the position of the government in power, what's your definition of things can be worse in terms of pump price, security, the exchange rates, the economy, unemployment? What is the definition of worse? What would it have been if this government had not been doing what you say it is doing?
It could just have been worse if President Muhammadu Buhari didn't come in to massively address the insecurity. Let me tell you what the plan was. ISWAP has a massive control over the area of Afghanistan. And for them, Boko Haram was like an opposition force. So ISWAP's responsibility gradually will claim that the province of West Africa is their natural inheritance. And so there is a long-term projected program to wipe out Muslims of the Nigerian type and Christians alike out and take dominance over the whole of Nigeria up to the Atlantic Ocean. It's a program that is well known in the terrorism cycle. So their migration gradually, confronting particularly with the collapse of Afghanistan, they taking over and depending solely on the export of narcotics as a main source of foreign exchange earning, giving them avalanche of opportunity to raise enough capital to start their expansionist program. You can imagine the massive onslaught of ISWAP against Nigeria through from the north. Now, if you look at that implication, will you be even alive to start talking of a pump price, unemployment, and the rest? So President Buhari is dealing with a bigger picture. And if you're not on the driving seat, you just reduce yourself to mere academic statistics. But what he has done is to halt and repress the onslaught. And that to me is very essential. Security comes first. Section 14, subsection 2 of our Constitution provides that the welfare and security of the system, the primary purpose of government. Even before you move to welfare, security comes first. So he's been able to stabilize this country. We were going through a decadence of anarchy, resulting into full necrosis of the society. That's where we're heading to. So reversing that trend is a sufficient achievement. But because it's not tangible in material, calculable terms, people don't see it. But can you imagine if 3-4 states had the flag of Boko Haram stretching down into the central, north central, and approaching the southern belt? That could have happened. So it could have been worse. So where we are, reversing all of that sociological security shows clearly that President Muhammadu Buhari understands.
It was just yesterday that the governor of Niger State was lamenting, talking about the fact that those terrorists, the residents, are paying taxes to those terrorists. It was the same yesterday that he said they are grossly underpoliced. That how can a state that has over about 10% of the landmass of the country have just 4,000 policemen attached to it? He said before that he's cried out to the center, nobody is listening to him, that they are almost being overrun by terrorists.
Yes, and that's why I said it clearly and again, it could have been worse. But don't forget, before now, we had 4 states that were paying taxes to these terrorists. Before now, the whole of Borno and Yobe was no-go area. Before now, most of the communities there had started adopting the new faith. So this does not mean that because of the aggressive military action of President Muhammadu Buhari, it doesn't mean that we don't have isolated cases of the case of Niger State. I sympathize with the governor of Niger State. The reality is that this will come before the APC Progressive Governors Forum, and it will be addressed and the matter presented to the president. I also believe strongly Nigeria is indeed underpoliced. I agree. I also think international circles, 10 people to 1 policeman. That's the international standard. But today in Nigeria, you have more than 200 people to 1 policeman. So it's almost impossible for you to police a nation of this nature, particularly coming on the wheels of massive unemployment as it is. Why? Because we're too dependent on oil, and oil cannot account for up to 5% of employment in this country. So that's why the president said back to agriculture, which is agro-industrial revolution, that started in 1876 in the UK. It's just coming now. The wheels of agro-industrial beginning to turn, creating jobs and creating opportunity, reducing banditry, and reducing these Boko Haram incidents. This is happening. It's gradual. It's going to take time, but it doesn't eliminate isolated cases.
Let's talk about your state, because some persons have some disagreements about what's going on there. In fact, I see a document here which says that in 2018, you budgeted 18 billion naira for the Odukpani spaghetti flyover. In 2010, 16 billion was allocated for that, while in 2019, and then in 2020, 8 billion naira was set aside for the same project. And they say that at the moment, they don't see anything tangible going on.
I sympathize with that. If you go to Odukpani Calabar Road, I have created a dualization of the entire road. It has never happened in the history of the state. The spaghetti flyover, we have finished the apartments and the beams have been cast. We have all the 21 beams cast and we're waiting and ready for launching. If you go on the same road, you will see whereby the spur off the right-hand side of the Odukpani Calabar Way, you will see indeed that even the superhighway is on asphalting level already. Critics just speak from the stomach because they don't realize that the same Cross River State has an allocation of about 3.2 billion in a month. 1.8 billion of that is taken directly from the presidency to service loans that I did not take. I inherited a government with over 382 billion naira as loans on the shoulders of the government, where the oil wells of the state have been taken away. I have a salary of about 3.2 billion in a month to pay, with 1.8 billion direct debit, direct before the allocation gets to the state. So I play with only 1.8 billion to run the state and to run all the infrastructures of the state. Occasional funds coming by interventions of government. But to say that if you go there, you don't see anything. We used to have only one lane into Calabar. Today it's dual carriage. And the other lane has been completed all over. The budget of 18 billion, 16 billion, and 8 billion, as it were, is the envelope, which is the visionary provision, which is an intellectual budgetary system based on the principle of budgeting to vision instead of budgeting to envelope. It's a prosperity agenda set up to see how this state can change. And if you go to Calabar today, nobody will tell you that there's no dual carriage to Calabar. And no, people ask, where do I get the money to do it? So the second lane, which is the federal government lane, which is the old lane that was there, we are now preparing, and we've just given the contract to Zenith Construction to do the asphalt overlay on the old lane. The street lights, all the lighting poles are being done in a pad and pylon factory in Akampa. They are stockpiled there, and we're erecting the poles to be able to have all of that street light right from Otupani Junction to Calabar City. That will happen before April. It's ongoing. But don't worry about my budget figures. Go and ask how much have been put in. Because the real project cost is there, but the intellectual cost of doing it gets far less than where we are. So it's not as if there's an 18 billion and the 18 billion was made available. I was taken. Then the second year, there's a 16 billion and there was a 16 billion taken. If I made a budget provision of 18 billion for a year, and I'm only able to raise 1 billion for that 1 year to provide for it, the original cost of 18 billion will still be there. But I've only put in 1 billion of the 18 billion. Carried over to next year, I dropped by 1 billion or 2 billion based on what I've spent and what I expected to spend more. But they don't understand the dynamics of budgeting because they are 21st century illiterate. They only read statistics and figures without trying to distill it into practical reality on how government works. Government does not work by just mere stochastic data. It's deliberate calculation using, who would have imagined that Cross River State will have this number of factories, this quantity of people being appointed into government, even when we really don't need them, just to reduce the sociological epinoscopy and create a new horizon of opportunity to eclipse the tension that has befallen other states. This is called definitely intellectual application of knowledge.
Absolutely.
Sorry?
No, it's understandable. You're a lecturer. But you know, one of the things that a number of people have also taken you up on is that how profitable or viable are the 38 industries that your government is said to have created? Some are asking, for instance, how much did these industries add or generate into the 2022 budget of convoluted agglutination?
I just ask you a simple question. Is a garment factory an essential requirement in this country or not? A pharmaceutical factory, is it essential or not? A frozen chicken processing factory, is it essential or not? A feed mill processing factory, is it essential or not? A cocoa processing factory, is it essential or not? A rice mill factory, is it essential or not? A 27 megawatt power plant, is it essential or not? A vegetable oil factory, is it essential or not? A yam poundo processing factory, is it essential or not? I can go on and on. A government can only catalyze into existence these factories. Government cannot run them. I am the first governor to subject my policy provided for me under the 2007 law, which provides for privatization. I subject my powers to a referendum to seek cross-invariance opinion about all of these factors that are set up. How do we run going forward? Government can manufacture a private sector, but government cannot run businesses. It can create businesses. And this is where I have a problem. People say government has no business with business. In a third world economy, managing sluggish economy, I have an MBA. My master's degree in business administration focused on managing public sector, particularly in third world economies. To take a third world to first world within 8 years required a robust, expansive thought beyond the carrying capacity of the state. If I was looking at the state, I would have collapsed completely. So I resourced to my intellect.
Yes, pardon me to jump in. We're winding down now, so we just want to see if we can ask you as much questions before we go in the next 2-3 minutes. Is it true that you want to run for president?
I won't give a classic answer. I think the party that I belong to has a relationship. We have a family culture. And my historical background is clear. I don't ever throw myself up. But I think in the course of time, when people's historical background is properly analyzed, as a senator, I had 41 bills, which was the highest in the 7th Senate. As governor, the longest dual carriage road ever done by any governor in the history of Cross River, in the history of Nigeria, is in Cross River, stretching from Obaliku through Obudu, through Bekwara, into Ogoja, up to Iyala. The longest stretch that nobody imagined was possible. And it's not been on the news because I keep my things to myself.
You wouldn't mind being considered for that position?
I will want to be clinically pussyfoot on that. I think the party should take a decision based on zoning principle, which will be resolved as a party. We will look at the circumstance of ground and see what can stabilize and what age and person, character, integrity, and value will be bringing to this country to be able to create opportunity for the younger generation to begin to see that truly we're prepared to bring things and make things better. If I become available, so be
I
it.
hope we're still... Pardon me, I hope we're still in the days when, I mean, classic yes and no will just do. I mean, are you interested? Are you not? So, I mean, you can just simplify. I understand you have that tendency to throw in the big words, but I mean, yes and no will do. So, do you have the plans or not?
To give a yes or no. To ask me to give a yes or no, it sounds a little, you know that it doesn't fit in the 21st century as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Preliminary explanations.
Well, yes and no, they are still in the dictionary of the 21st century. So are you interested?
I agree with you.
Are you going or not?
Let me say yes and no.
Okay.
If the family finds that I'm fit and proper, yes. If the family finds that there's a better option and that option fits into the zoning, of course I will stand by the party position. That's where I am. I'm a conformist. I work with the system. I've never been an aberrant and I've never been an outlier. I work with the system. Where the system becomes toxic, I take a walk.
Okay.
Lean liberty is better than part slavery. I'd rather be in my humble self than to force myself into a situation where I become a source of concern to others.
I think it's also important, as we wind down in 30 seconds, to throw in this one about security. I mean, boat owners have been complaining about that Orong-Calabar route, saying that they get attacked, you know, by pirates and the rest, and they even pay monies. So is there something, are you aware of that, and are you planning to do anything about it?
Well, incidentally, that's a federal road. And also, recently, the federal government, using the NNPC support fund, has provided and awarded a contract, and I know to Sematech like 79 billion, and to Julius Berger, the other component. So I see that work starting very soon. Actually, we have basically community issues in terms of compensations and all of that. And I know that Governor Fashola, as today is actually doing very well as a minister for works to see that that compensation is dealt with in collaboration with myself as governor of the state. So I see that being fixed. We need that road because during Carnival, everybody comes through that road.
Your Excellency, it's not the road, it's the waterways, boat owners. They've been attacked by pirates, and it's not the road, it's the waterway.
That's why I've just set a committee led by Bobby Ekwenyo to deal with the issue of security on the waterways. Definitely, the problem is that these pirates stay inside the creeks. You need a flatboat. The marine vessels that we have for the Marine Police and the Nigerian Navy, who are doing a great job because NNSB is in Calabar, the Eastern Naval Command is in Calabar, but these guys hide in the creek.
All right, pardon me, Excellency, we've run out of time, and who knows, something you might have confused the party chairman, whether or not you're going to run. What should he do listening to you right now? He's not sure, but when you say yes and no, if you're going to run for that office. But thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. We've been speaking with His Excellency Professor Ben Ayade, Governor of Cross River State.